Well, another video on the subject of more